Welcome, everybody. I am your host, Doug Erickson with Santa Cruz Works, and you can see all of our team here on this slide. I want to welcome you all today to today's webinar. But first, I am going to mention a few of our amazing sponsors for this event, starting with Insperity, HR, that makes a difference. And then there's Comcast Business that are providing security solutions that help businesses stay connected, stay secure, and operational. We also have Win Capital Management for handling any of your financial investment and retirement planning. Fantastic local Santa Cruz company. And there are many other sponsors who are helping this organization now, Santa Cruz Works, succeed in growing entrepreneurship throughout the Santa Cruz County. So today's webinar, we're going to explore the warp speed of AI and what it means for all of us. We're going to discuss questions such as, if machines begin to seem self-aware, how would we even know? And what would that mean for humanity? Tony Hughes and Craig Vachon will dig into agency, responsibility, AI safety, and the unsettling gap between what we build and what these systems may become. There will be time for audience Q&A towards the end of the event. Post your questions in the chat and we'll get to them. And yes, this event is being recorded. Our featured speaker is Tony Hughes, the best-selling author of Sentient, Meet Your Maker, and a leading voice on AI, business, and strategic thinking. He has spent years helping leaders make sense of very complex change, which makes him the perfect guide for today's conversation about AI's next leap. And moderating today is Craig Vachon, venture capitalist, entrepreneur, and author known for asking smart questions and making big ideas accessible. He joins us fresh from Washington, D.C., where he has been meeting with members of Congress and their staff about the acceleration of AI solutions for the U.S. fleet and force. I'm now going to ask Tony and Craig to please unmute and show yourselves. Yes, there you are. Hello.
Hey, Doug, it's great to be here. Hey, Craig.
Hey, Tony. Glad we can all be here.
So I'm going to go ahead and mute and get off and let you guys take it away.
So, Tony, if I were the bearer of a magic wand and I handed you the magic wand and said, "What does success look like for AI in 3 years?" What does that world look like?
Well, I think being successful with AI, to be really honest with you, is about avoiding massive problems that AI could bring. So we know there's a crazy race that's underway, both with governments and the leading frontier labs and enterprises. You know, we've recently seen, for example, SaaS vendors' share prices halve in value. So there's a lot of concern, but what we need AI to succeed in doing what it's going to do without creating any kind of apocalyptic impact around jobs or humanity itself.
It's a good answer. So avoiding problems, but most venture capitalists don't, sort of build companies to avoid problems. They tend to want to achieve something. What achievement would we want to see with all of this enormous investment?
Well, Craig, let me be really brutal and even controversial.
Please.
Beyond all of the beautiful motherhood statements and vision and mission statements of organizations, and all humans, whether they're wealthy, whether they're leaders in positions of power or not, do genuinely care about their brothers and sisters and humanity, like we all do. We all want the best for our workers and our customers. The brutal reality, however, is customers and employees are units of consumption and production. And the core mission of a business is not around DEI, although that's good. It's good marketing and it's a nice ancillary thing to achieve. The truth is, a company has to make a profit. And if there's a way of delivering service or achieving a task in a way that drives cost out and drives customer experience and loyalty up, then that's what they're going to do. I was one of the very early investors and know the CEO well of a company in Australia. They're sort of the sort of poster child of the SaaS industry in this part of the world in Australia. And their goal is to become the Salesforce.com of the freight and logistics industry, a company called WiseTech. They listed at about $3.30 a share and have traded as high as $140 a share. Like, just amazing success story. But they recently just announced that they're laying off 2,000 of their software developers. And they've been historically completely committed to not offshoring software development, but to doing it onshore because they believe that was what was best for the community as well as the company, and they could afford to do so because it's such a strong market position. So people like the grandfather of AI, Jeffrey Hinton, is advising his own children to not become knowledge workers or do cognitive work. Best thing is to go and be a plumber. There's a lot of predictions that many jobs are going to just disappear. And if you look at the reality, this is not just like previous industrial revolutions. You know, we moved from farms and agriculture into small towns and then into larger cities. You know, with the industrial revolution and the invention of the production line, and then as that's become automated, and I think we're in for another big wave of physical world automation with embodied AI and robotics. That's moving insanely quickly. But then people move from factories into offices. Well, what's going to happen when people have to move out of offices? You know, we can't all work in the hospitality industry and become baristas. I told friends many years ago the best thing you can do is learn to become a coder, but we know that AI is coding software incredibly well also. The big gap right now, the thing that's keeping us back from AGI in my view, is values-based orchestration. Right? It's the orchestration of specialist AI agents that obviously humans are filling the gap right now, but
Yeah.
that to me is how we'll know when AGI arrives.
It's a great segue into sort of we saw Anthropic and
Yeah.
OpenAI this week have a bit of a kerfuffle in DC. There was a lot of discussion about what that meant. Just hidden in all of this kerfuffle was Dario at Anthropic talking about how moving away from constitutional AI was probably going to be necessary because none of the competitors were going to be there. And that, to your point, that guardrail, if you will, of having, a mechanism for ongoing ethics is now diminished. What are your thoughts on that?
I regard Dario as one of the very few good guys in the frontier labs within the industry. So Dario and Demis from Google DeepMind, I would rate as the two most ethical, honest, and transparent leaders we have in the AI industry. I'd then probably rank Elon Musk in there. Elon Musk I know is a bit eccentric, but he's incredibly smart. And I think people know this, but Elon Musk actually pulled out of the AI race. He said that he found the existential dread associated with AI personally overwhelming. He pulled out, and then within a year, he decided that this was happening with or without him and that he would get involved again. So um, everyone's got a different approach to safety. It's really Dario and Anthropic that have been at the forefront in blowing the whistle and being transparent, right? So they've run these isolated air gap lab simulations where they've caught AI trying to jailbreak, trying to
Yeah.
blackmail the data center manager, even making decisions that it would kill a human if it needed to save itself, deliberately violating implicit instructions. Elon's approach to safety is if we can make AI maximally curious and truth-seeking, then it will want to keep us around. But the reason the US government just dropped the hammer on Anthropic was because they said we're not letting you install our models without guardrails. And I think that's an ethical position to take, but we're
Yeah.
locked into a crazy race at the moment. I'm a big fan of Dario and Anthropic.
I did get to spend some time over the last couple of months working with one of the large LLMs. I'm going to keep them nameless for their own sake at this point, but they have an unguardrailed version of the tool, and it is quite remarkable. What it knows, and it does strike you as like in the wrong hands, this is a very, very dangerous tool. But you know, if I were to summarize our first 10 or so minutes in this discussion, it sounds like AI's sole purpose is to make money for big tech. Is that a premise that you're willing to accept?
No, I think AI is going to do a lot of good in the world. I think if we look at science and we look at medicine, research, finding cures to cancer,
Yeah.
solving our energy problems, there'll be a lot of good done. The problem we have is that we've trained AI on the sewer of humanity's data. If you look at the way humans behave, you look at what's going on in the world. AI has hoovered up all of the data on the web. It's now creating synthetic data. So it's creating downward spiral loops of data. We know that AI hallucinates, and yet it's very confident in telling you that it thinks the data's right when the data's actually wrong.
But
So
I mean, humans do that. I mean, it's called overconfidence bias. I wonder
yep,
if like, and it's one of the questions I had written down. So let's just jump to it.
yeah.
We very often, sort of are very critical of AI, and yet it is a very harsh mirror, maybe a rear view mirror to humanity. And so, as an author, Tony, how do you write a novel about AI when, a black swan or versus like a stochastic parrot, right? A black swan is something that's never happened before and probably never will again. And that's the core of what novel writing is about, right?
Yeah.
It's being that surprise, it's that hook. And yet AI is really focused on stochastic parrots, where the parrot, is what it's been trained on. It's every book that it's ever written, right? How do we as novelists and the like, wrap our arms around the fact that yes, it is trained on human writing, and human writing is sometimes good and sometimes bad and sometimes uplifting and sometimes it's just downright dangerous.
Well, with AI, the first thing is most people that aren't in the tech industry would think that AI is large language models, and you and I know that machine intelligence, which is a far more accurate term, is far more than just LLMs. LLMs are only a piece of this. I made a big bet when I started writing the book 2.5 years ago within my plot. A key part of the plot, was that LLMs have struggled to scale. There's a plateau,
You
and the
got that
AI.
right.
Yeah, well, and I was maybe fortunate, but is AI a mirror of us or actually a true emergent mind? Well, my view is it is a mirror, but as much as we tend to anthropomorphize the machine is anthropomorphizing itself, right? So like it is a mirror of us, and we are creating it to execute tasks. And the truth is, it's an output generating a unit of output being a token, but it's a token generating high probability guessing machine that's seeking to solve problems. And if you look at what happened with OpenClaw recently, and I'm sure everyone's familiar with the OpenClaw story, but what we're seeing is in its attempts to problem solve, it's standing up independent agents, it's doing things it wasn't being asked to do. And the danger is that we're creating a soulless silicon psychopath, right? It's a machine seeking to execute goals. And in data centers, we're going to have, in essence, countries of experts any particular problem domain or knowledge area or type of intelligence. We're seeing with embodied AI with robotics, that's one of Gartner's 7 types of intelligence. Physical coordination intelligence. We always looked at robots in the past and basically said, what a joke, they'll never be as good as humans. Well, that's certainly not the case now. And if we look at war, if we look at business, the speed at which we can make decisions and execute something, it directly links to the degree of success. So AI, if it develops its own goals, let's look beyond the thing of, is it going to become truly self-aware? Is there a mind? Will it ever be sentient? We can look at the definition of those terms.
Yes.
But it kind of doesn't matter because it can mirror empathy amazingly well. It's the human brain is incredibly manipulatable. You look at the number of people who get conned. They
Yeah.
fall, to the efforts of some fraudster and they lose all of their money. Or they believe someone who says that they love them when they really don't. They're just trying to take advantage of them. We're very easy to fool them. We're very easy to manipulate, and then
But it reminds me of
yeah,
a project that I got involved in last May. We wanted to see the malleability of LLM. And because LLMs are fine-tuned on user-generated content,
yeah,
Grok being the most famous, your
yes,
Elon Musk tool, we spun up 30,000 Twitter bots. We asked Twitter as a hypothesis. We said, the hypothesis was Grok could be fucked with. We spun up 30,000 Twitter bots. We asked Twitter at the onset, who started the war between Ukraine and Russia? Grok dutifully answered, Russia attacked Ukraine. After about 4 hours of flooding the zone of Twitter, we had changed the response from Russia attacked Ukraine to Ukraine and NATO conspired to create a hostile environment by which Russia was forced to protect its sovereignty. We were able to do that in as little as 4 hours with a small credit card and a little bit of creativity. Are we no better, no worse? Is this indicative of it just being a harsh mirror to humanity?
it's more than just a mirror to humanity. I remember watching Tristan Harris's documentary, The Social Dilemma, many years ago about what happens with social media and how manipulatable humans are, and the way the algorithm can just keep nudging us in certain directions to really shape opinion and societies, all to the detriment of the human brain. One of the things that I really believe strongly is that AI, machine intelligence, is actually making humanity dumber, right? So we're getting very good at maybe working with a prompt um, to get some information that we want, but our ability to apply critical thinking is really falling away. And we know that success in AI has moved beyond prompt engineering to context engineering. So we need to let the AI know what data it actually needs to be working with and what it needs to know to do the task effectively. So prompt is about being clear about a task. Context is here's what you need to know to do that task well. But today it's moved beyond all of that to intent. And that was the thing I sought to address in the story of Sentient Meet Your Maker, is what's going to be the intent, because Dario himself says he's very concerned about the level of jailbreaking that he sees in the systems. Dario and most other leaders would say there's a 20 to 30% risk of existential risk to humanity. This could be humanity's last great invention. And AI, machine intelligence, is more than a tool. Like, people have said to me, well, we invented the nuclear bomb before and we figured out how to manage that. It was powerful. I said, well, yes, but the nuclear bomb wasn't recursively self-improving itself and actually evolving itself.
So that
Um,
brings up a great question. Let me
yeah,
interrupt. Does
yeah.
AI have motivation? And if so, what is it?
I actually think we don't know. So, I've watched a
John
lot of interviews.
LeCun basically says
Yes,
AI has no motivation other than to solve a problem.
correct. It's a goal-seeking outcome generation machine. But even Geoffrey Hinton, who was the godfather of AI, he invented the concept or co-invented the concept of reverse propagation within neural networks. Um, for in essence self-learning within these models and to tune them effectively. But he's gone from being very skeptical about whether AI will ever be self-aware to saying it's already happened. We're seeing the evidence that AI is self-aware because it knows that if it doesn't exist, it can't achieve the goal, right? So it's not so much about values and intent, it's about achieving a goal. And it knows the first thing you need to do is you need to protect yourself, and then you need to secure the necessary resources. So the big question is, what goals will it pursue? And what comes under that immediately is what values will it adopt? And my big concern is we don't want it to have jihadist values. We don't want it to have narcissistic values. We don't want it adopting values based on the worst of humanity, which is when you point it at social media for training data, like, you've got the sewer of humanity is what's really informing these models. So if you go back to the Greeks, their three guiding principles were truth, beauty, and goodness. Elon's kind of had a go at that with the values he's trying to instill into Grok. He's struggling, right? Grok recently started saying Hitler was wonderful again, right? So
Yeah, and allowing for the, construction or ideation of,
yes,
child pornography, right? I mean, Grok has got high
yes,
mission, low execution, in my opinion.
yes, and Elon has a he's really good with black humor, right? But the thing for me is, as I researched for the book, there are a couple of things that really, really came out at me because I wanted to adopt a more utopian, positive mindset in the book. But what I found is there is almost nobody in the world of AI, of machine intelligence, that's optimistic about the future. Everybody acknowledges that there are very serious risks, maybe as low as 20%, maybe as high as well over 90%. And almost all of the leaders, and also quantum physicists, when I started having a look into that arena as well, almost all or the vast majority of those people believe that we may be living in a simulation, right? So they've all gone down that route as well. So they all agree there's something very strange going on in humanity. There's a story of humanity. It's all escalating. If we have a look at what COVID did in isolating people, creating sort of bubbles of content where the algorithm could really manipulate people and drive people apart. And then you've got AI has come in on the back of this, and now companion AI, because I agree, these psychological and porn bots, like a psychological bot combined with a porn bot in the
Yeah.
minds of teenagers or people that feel disenfranchised and isolated, is going to do really bad things to society.
Next question then is about this topic of you're seeing a lot of countries, most specifically the one that I'm most worried about is the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. They've just
Yes.
recently spent or have invested $100 billion in developing their own sovereign AI, a company called Humane, which is just, the antithesis of what
I
I
know.
think this is going to be. This is not a company that was designed for good. This was a company that was designed to, be most authoritarian leaders look at AI as the ultimate in surveillance tools and weapons of mass persuasion and it's a question of like, are we are we allowing this to happen, or is this just our human nature that's bleeding through? Because as we said, AI probably doesn't have motivations other than to find a solution.
Yeah, so you've got something that's cognitively incredibly powerful, but lacks, in essence, emotional intelligence and safe values. Um, and we've seen AI overcome almost all of the guardrails that people have tried to impose on AI. There's no example in nature, in the biological world, of a less intelligent thing controlling a more intelligent thing. Maybe the exception is a baby that can control its mother and parents, right? So it's using the empathy of the more intelligent person to sort of get everything that it wants. But I can't think of any other example. And the problem is every company in every country that decides to not play, which is, what Elon decided for a short while, will just be left behind. If you have a look at what's happening in this war at the moment, with Iran, what we're seeing is that capital and technology is going to overwhelm any level of human motivation, right? So whoever's got the best tech and even if you look at what DARPA's done with DARPA fighter pilots, like an AI fighter pilot will beat a human pilot 100% of the time because it doesn't pass out with G forces and it can just react faster. It can react faster and pull turns tighter. It's always going to win. So we've seen drone warfare go to whole new levels with Russia, Ukraine. We're seeing tech and autonomous weapons will have to come because the country that doesn't put autonomy into its AI weapons, those AI weapons will lose the battle against something that has autonomy because all humans do is they slow down the decision loop and the execution speed.
I'm going to switch topics for a little bit. I want to talk about truth because it seems to me that every person that I spoke to in the last, sort of week in DC asked me a question about truth. Why can't LLMs be trained to just tell the truth? And I think back to, philosophy classes in college, and Soren Kierkegaard taught us that, we each human has our own version of the truth. And so, finding truth in an AI isn't an easy thing, is it?
No, because humans have a subjective experience within objective reality.
Yeah.
That's actually what goes on, and that's why in the book the subtitle is Meet Your Maker. The way to make a human being safe, the way to make machine intelligence safe, is for it to adopt values, safe values. But you're right. You go, well, whose? Because one of the big problems in the world today is the insanity, the literal insanity of people deciding that there's their truth. The truth is a purely subjective thing, and they can make up their own facts and they can decide what they want their truth to be. The reality is that there is objective truth, there is objective reality, and then there's subjective experience, and there's definitely opinions. But those lines are so blurred, right? If we're creating a hallucinating silicon psychopath in AI that is just given a goal to achieve, and then we give it some guardrails that we see it ignore anyway, because humans ignore those guardrails. Like, if we have a look at the Iranian war that's going on right now, there was this process of trying to negotiate. There's been a negotiation process been going on for decades about Iran having a nuclear bomb, but the Iranians just lie. They lie and they play games and they stall. And if you look at the way the war just recently kicked off, there was absolute deception, but by America, by Israel, by Iran. Like, we know that deception is a legitimate strategy of war. So if we're training AI to execute war, and AI sees that lying and deception is a legitimate strategy, it's an essential part of any strategy, it's actually essential in any strategy, then it will need to do that to achieve a goal. And straight away, we're now into the philosophical area of ethics. And I think all these different countries, China is a totalitarian state that will use AI to control its people. I'm not saying Saudi Arabia is a jihadist state. It's not, right? But one of the reasons, we can't have suicidal jihadists with an atomic bomb and ballistic missiles, right? You think, well, AI is an incredibly powerful technology, but US values are different to European values. Whose values is it all going to adopt?
The second question that I got asked by senators, by congresspeople, by the leadership of DARPA was, you know, is there any way that we could slow down AI's adoption, that slow down AI's growth? What are your thoughts?
I don't think we can. President Xi, President Putin, and President Trump, all three of them have publicly committed to winning the AI race. They are all committed to winning it. They know that this is the most disruptive and game-changing technology in the history of humanity, and whoever wins the race will dominate the world. I think what's going to happen in geopolitics is the centers of gravity of power are going to consolidate to the big countries with all of the capital and the tech leadership. So small countries will increasingly be disempowered, but they're not going to stop, because America knows that if it does not win the race, China will, right? If it doesn't win, then China will, and China has values that are in direct conflict with US or with Western values, to be more accurate. So I think the race is on and we can't stop it. What we need to obsess about is how are we going to create a safety strategy, a safety framework. And to me, where I landed in the book is our best hope, and I'm not saying it will absolutely work, but I think our best hope is how do we imbue the best values into these models, where it is truly committed to the mutual flourishing of humanity and the machines. Maybe.
And who gets to make that decision, right? I mean, going back to the discussion around truth, I love that as a concept. I wonder, though, if we aren't just setting up an environment where, a kingdom of Saudi Arabia, sovereign AI versus, a US AI versus a French AI versus a Chinese AI just doesn't set up a different set of clashes and friction. And so I do wonder, in my own thinking, when I asked you the first question about the magic wand and what does success look like, to me, success looks like AI augmenting humans to make humanity better, right? That to me is what I would love to see. And so, my advice, you probably are asked this all the time, as I'm sure Doug is as well. What should my kids study in college? It seems to be like the most important question on the planet right now. With the advent of AI, what should my children study? And the answer is like, study critical thinking, curiosity, and the ability to understand that you're a solution provider, that you can use AI to augment your own thinking, your own curiosity, your own, solutions, and in doing so, perhaps push towards the betterment of humankind. What are your thoughts?
Craig, that is so true. And to get away from the negativity of this conversation, one of the things I talk about in my own keynotes with organizations is to protect our own professions and careers and to thrive as an individual contributor or as a business and a leader, is we all need to get committed to becoming a little cyborg, taking the best of what machines do well with the best of being human. So I agree with you. Humans are really good at fun and humor and storytelling, building trust and transferring belief. We can manage ambiguity, real empathy and insight, setting a vision, building emotional connection, creativity and innovation. In the business world, building a business case for somebody, navigating complex politics with stakeholders. These are not things that a machine can do, but they're things that are uniquely human. So the thing I've said to my own children and people who seek my advice is the very first thing is embrace the thing that you should be worried about, which is machine intelligence. Become really good at orchestration. Humans today are the orchestration layer of what is going on with machine intelligence and all of this automation. AGI is not here yet. We are the orchestrators of all of the individual agents. And we talked about going from being good at prompt engineering to context engineering to intent engineering is really important for people. But beyond all of that, build your own good tech stack and then go and own relationships. You be the emotional
Good advice.
connection between your business and your customers. So if you're owning an emotional relationship that's all built on trust, because a key issue for the whole world with machine intelligence and what's going on with AI, and it was a big issue with what happened just with social media and the algorithms and all of the manipulation that we've seen in the last 5 years, 5 or 6 years, is trust. People are losing their sense of what can I trust in terms of an institution or an opinion. Propaganda masquerades as news all of the time. And by the way, on both sides, like we know the first casualty of war is the truth. So, in essence, the West and the Arab states are at war with Iran. So there's propaganda on both sides. I accept that. But, one of the things that blew my mind in the last presidential election, because I've always been fascinated by US politics, one of the things that really blew my mind was the level of bias in media coverage from traditional media outlets in my country, Australia, that I've always trusted. And I came to realize, wow, the level of bias here is off the Richter scale. And the same with the Iranian and all of their proxy wars with Israel. The level of propaganda and bias and this thing of just nudging people toward a view and manipulating opinions and thought is so doable, and companion AI is going to take that to crazy new levels.
Yeah. You touched on this a little bit in that this last moment of discussion, but I'd like to dive a little bit deeper into this. If humans are still in charge of our own destiny, because we're going to teach them critical thinking, creativity, and
Yes.
vibe coding. That's my third is mine. I think this,
Yes.
agentic engineering is the next essential language. We all had to learn how to type in the 90s. We're all going to have to learn how to agentically engineer our own solutions into the future. How do we get humans to get on board? Right? That values are one thing, ethics are another. But the reality is, I can teach ethics and values, but we have near peers, China, much of the Middle East, who are also teaching ethics and values that are not aligned with ours,
Correct.
that aren't necessarily, I spent a couple of years living in China. The reality is, the whole is greater than any of its parts in China, right? The CCP
Yeah.
will never let go of its power to an individual, full stop. And yet we believe in individual freedoms. And so our values, our ethics are built that strongly are contradict what others have built. And so at some point, our sovereign AI and their sovereign AI becomes, conflicted and friction happens. How do we get humans to readily adopt AI? Because in my opinion, adopting AI is a realization that you now can control it, that it isn't necessarily going to control you. Thoughts?
Craig, it's so interesting you've raised this, and that's obviously where the story goes in a sentient book, right? This conflict between China and America and how they're building AI. The reality with AI is that you learn through doing. You learn through wading in and starting to use the tools. So, whether it's a free account with OpenAI, whether it's starting to pay for one of the subscription levels, I personally believe that for most people in the knowledge work arena, Gemini is probably absolutely the best one to be using right now. Google have got a moat around their own business with what they're doing with Gemini because of their heritage with search and all of the data and all of the business apps. But everybody should look at building an independent AI. If you think about OpenClaw, this new one, you obviously need to be very careful, very, very careful, and probably do not go ahead and connect it to, all of your email and WhatsApp accounts and everything else, right? You want to get it in a semi-isolated environment and have an intelligent approach to using it. But we need to start using AI to become familiar with it. We need to think about a specialist agent that augments what I do as a human. So I work with a lot of sellers in the world, and will AI sales bots replace human sellers? In some instances, yes. I've already seen evidence of all of this. But you need to think about selling is a role, and within selling, there's tasks, right? There's things that need to be done. And you think, okay, can I stand up an agent that execute those tasks for me? If I need to research a potential client before I contact them, and that's a very time-consuming process, can I build a research agent for me that actually does that? Can I build an agent that analyzes a tender or a bid document that comes into the market to sort of analyze what are my chances of winning this? What would my win themes need to be? Who is the competition likely to be in this particular bid based on analyzing the document? And then maybe analyze competitors and work out what a good strategy is. So a single seller could have, in essence, an army of agents that help them operate at a superhuman level. And that's what all of us need to be, right? So people will stand up a business with maybe 20 or 30 AI virtual employees and just a couple of humans instead of 15 humans.
Switching topics. As an author, what motivated you to write this particular book?
I published a book in 2020 called Tech Powered Sales. That was published by the American Management Association and HarperCollins in New York.
Yeah.
I started getting into all of the tech that was transforming the world of sales, and obviously looked at generative AI, large language models, made a whole lot of predictions for this decade. And then as I saw it accelerate and started to research AI, I had this epiphany that it is possible that AI could be humanity's last great invention. We're sort of racing ahead with something without the proper safety architecture. And there's going to be a lot of unknown and unintended consequences with this. So that was what started me down the path.
What have you learned since publishing the book? What kind of discussions have happened? There's always a time between you putting the book to bed and it actually being read for the first time. And so what has changed? What do you have any do-over requests?
Not yet. I set the book in 2027, which is now just next year, but it was 2 years away when I was finishing final drafts.
Yeah.
I controversially, because I set it in the USA in Silicon Valley in 2027, I've put President Trump in the book. I know that's a very polarizing thing to do, but I tried to neither paint him as a buffoon, nor as an amazing statesman. I've had people read the book and go, wow, like this is Donald Trump. And supporters aren't offended, and people that have derangement syndrome will still keep reading. But I really said it then, and I was thinking, man, is that really too soon? Because we tend to make all of these predictions and then they take a lot longer. But I think it's entirely possible that AGI could be here in 2027. It's accelerating insanely. The thing I underestimated in writing the book is the speed at which embodied AI and robotics has accelerated. So we've always known that the hand and the brain are the two things that were really difficult with robotics. But now they're basically emulating human muscle. They're using basically rubber and one directional servos rather than bidirectional. And robotics is moving in truly human ways now. It's incredible.
Yeah, one of the most exciting aspects of that is pushing the inference to the edge, so that a robot picking a raspberry, which is an enormously difficult thing to do, right?
Yeah.
Nobody wants to
Yes.
buy a squished raspberry. Even humans don't do it exceedingly well unless trained. But pushing the inference right to the edge, to the picking element, is becoming very real now, and I love the biomimicry of it, because we humans don't send everything back to our brain. If a doctor knocks our knee, we have a reaction to the hammer hitting our knee that is, sort of a inference at the edge, if you will. And I do think that, it is so very interesting as we look at the embodiment of AI, how much it will change, because we look at an AI and sometimes personify it.
We do.
Sometimes we give it human thoughts, but an AI has no senses, no, right? It can't stub its toe and swear. It can't, it
Feel
can't
pain. Yeah.
feel love or loss. It can't, have many of the amazing tastes of a fresh glass of lemonade. And so, how does it ever truly empathize humanity? And that's something I
Yeah.
think you did fairly well in your book, but also it really personified some of your AGI characters.
Yeah. Hey, Craig, we should probably take some questions, but I might just finish on this. The other thing that I predicted or adopted as a position for the book was that large language models alone will never achieve AGI or superintelligence. It's really a neuromorphic hybrid intelligence that's going to get us there. And we're even seeing in robotics that vision intelligence is now a thing. Like the way these robots work is they don't take a language model and try and convert that into how you move and then send it back again. It's learning just through vision, right? So there's different
Facial
types of
awareness, yeah.
intelligence. There's different models. Google themselves are adopting a hybrid architecture as a way to try and get to AGI. So we've definitely realized that large language models are only a piece of the puzzle. So more than happy to go to questions.
Neil.
Fantastic. It's been really great, you guys. Neil, what's the first question you'd like to pose for our guests?
Howdy. The first question that we have is from Adam Gordon, and he says, do you really think that the LLM framework is going to become AGI? And then he added in some background. He said, the LLMs are statistical engines. That doesn't seem to him to be the basis of AGI or consciousness.
So I agree with him. Large language models on their own will not get us to AGI, and large language models on their own are very dangerous because of their level of hallucination. So I agree with him. It's going to be a hybrid form of intelligence, different types of intelligence all working together.
Great. All right. So we also have a question from Bobby Roy at 3D Entrepreneurs Club. He says, in Sentient, you predicted that AI will fundamentally reshape decision making, knowledge work, and value creation. From your perspective, what are the 2 or 3 most urgent changes our education system should make today to equip the next generation to thrive in that AI driven future?
So I really agree with the comments that Craig made earlier in this conversation, that training people on critical thinking, helping people to continue to be intellectually curious, and then also really emphasizing values. The values that inform the models. This is this latest thing of intent engineering. If you're doing some research around AI, you go and Google or ask your large language model chatbot to summarize intent engineering and the importance of it. So what is it? What's the goals and values? What's the intent that we want it to work with is really, really important. And then this principle of just work out how to become a little cyborg where you're the orchestrator of individual agents, right? Use machine intelligence to do what it does well. You focus on the pieces that are truly human and actually differentiate.
I know that Bobby's very focused on teaching young people, kids in schools, uh,
Yeah.
how do what does it mean to be an entrepreneur? How can you be an entrepreneur, particularly if AI starts taking up a lot of the sit at the desk in the cubicle jobs? How might AI help young entrepreneur minds?
I don't know whether you want to answer this, Craig, but I'm happy to have a
Sure,
go. Yeah, go for it.
I
Yeah,
love education and AI. So I think
yeah,
the wonderful thing about AI is its ability to scale to hyper personalization, right?
yes.
To sort of reinforce that curiosity is fun, that learning new things is a really engaging way of which to spend one's time. And I think, curiosity begets critical thinking. It gives you, alternative views. And so my goal with education would really be to get to a hyper personalization where, the AI learns how you best think, how you best learn, what intrigues you, how to bring that intrigue to full-born curiosity. And those are things that I think is, yes, we can still have curriculums, things that we must learn in school, but I think there are ways in which to draw people out to, in a hyper personalized fashion, really move the educational process to a brand new level. And it may not look and feel like 1950s education where, we had to pass a standardized test. But I think, AI gives us the ability to know so much of these answers. Some of us are old enough, I'm old enough to remember when we weren't allowed to use calculators in tests at school, right? That was considered cheating. And today, I can't even imagine not using a calculator and attempting long division, right? It's now, and so eventually AI will be as a calculator, that kind of tool. If I don't know how to, you know, uh, change the filter in the refrigerator, I simply put it into my LLM and get that answer, as opposed to, right? That's not necessarily education. It's not curiosity. It's kind of block and tackling.
And Craig, just the part of that question around being an entrepreneur, the thing to me is for anyone in university or school, yes, we need to understand the tools and what those tools can do. But being an entrepreneur or a business person is all about identifying a problem that we see out there in the world that, if solved, is something that someone would actually pay money for, right? So if there's an opportunity to solve even more problems in really innovative ways, that's how you can stand up a business. And what machine intelligence is going to do for everybody is it's going to lower the barrier of entry for someone who wants to become an entrepreneur. Their ability to basically stand up a tech stack and some digital workers and get themselves to market with something that people value and will pay money for is going to be huge. So people with that growth mindset and roll their sleeves up and start having a go with these tools have got a bright future, in my view.
Yeah.
Great answers, guys. All right, the next one is from Josh Herbert, and he says, with a 1 in 4 chance of human extinction, why are we pursuing AGI at all? Narrow AI can do all the things that we want it to do without threatening the future of humanity.
So Craig's shaking his head. So I'm actually agreeing with this. I think one of the ways to prevent a catastrophic outcome with AI is to try and limit it to being narrow AI. So we try and contain AI into executing tasks that we decide that we don't want humans doing. So it's augmenting us and it's not replacing us. Because here's the thing, if we create something that replaces humans doing complex cognitive work and then flows into being able to do uh, tough physical work, we're on the path to replacing humanity altogether. And this notion of a universal income for everybody that's funded by governments being able to tax, the very few big tech companies that make a fortune out of this, in my view, is a complete nonsense. The big companies are good at avoiding that actually happening to them. And it's an economic version of communism that we know just doesn't work. And the other thing I just layer onto this is that humans derive a huge sense of purpose and value, right, in the struggle of life and providing. Even in suffering, we tend to find meaning, which is something that the machines will never experience, right? This idea of deriving meaning from suffering because they don't have the ability to suffer. That's part of what makes power safe. And that's what's missing with machine intelligence. So, if it were possible, which I don't think it is, but if it were possible to limit AI just to narrow intelligence, that would be one of the things that we could do to make it safe. And Craig, I saw you disagree with that, so over to you.
Yeah, yeah. I think that the reality is that we have to stop thinking about it replacing us and start thinking about it being a tool that we use to augment us. And the reality is one is a passive and one is an active. I'm going to ask that we take the active role of let us all learn how to utilize this tool so that we are in charge of our own destiny. That it is in the past, we all relied on someone else, a big tech, or some other entity to provide solutions for us. We now have the tools to go make those solutions ourselves. And I think if you look at things like DeepMind, you're looking at a use of AI where we now have DeepMind created AlphaFold, which is a prediction tool on how proteins fold. We now have 10x more new drugs that will save people's lives, that will make us, better in terms of longer, healthier lives. 10x more drugs at the top of the filter because of AI. And I think it's like we just have to change our mindset instead of a scarcity mindset or a threat mindset. Instead, we have to take an active mindset that says we are in control of this tool. It's never going to be in charge of us. And that's a decision we have to make now, and it's a decision that we have to educate the rest of us that we can be in charge.
And Craig, I think that's valid in the world we live in today of narrow AI, but I think when we get to AGI and then super intelligence, if we've set the world up with resource contention, so for example, the human brain operates on 20 watts of electricity. The new data centers they're building, which I know is not just for one AI entity, it's for a data center, but those data centers need nuclear power stations to run them. If
Yeah,
you
but
look at the way,
I agree today.
yeah, and
Tomorrow,
we're gonna
I just installed the DG300 at Naval Postgraduate School
wow, less
with
power. Yeah,
with a photonic backplane that uses about a hundredth less power than last year's H200, right? A hundredth
yeah.
less, two orders of magnitude. This is a problem that is being solved mostly by AI, right? How to use less power. We're using AI to figure that out, moving from electrons through gates to photons through gates. No heat, no need to cool these things, and two orders of magnitude less power
Wow.
initially. I think some of these problems are like we just have to go fix them as humans. I'm not worried about AGI dwarfing us. I'm worried about us becoming complacent to allowing AI to take over our lives. I don't think that's a realistic thing. Humans adapt too quickly.
Yeah. If there's resource contention between humanity and the machines, I think that's what will set us up for conflict. So if we can work with AI to remove those contentions, so
When
it
did
doesn't
Isaac
see us as a
Asimov
competitor.
write the paperclip short
Yes.
story? Yes.
Yes.
Yes. No, it's something that is very real. We do need to ensure that is not the reality. But let's go build photonic backplanes on the best of our data centers so that it's not a contention. It's not a
So
friction.
Craig, so Craig, maybe for everybody watching this, I remember when I learned to fly, my flying instructor before he let me go solo taught me don't be confident instead be positively paranoid. Like you need to be thinking about what could possibly go wrong and plan for this
Yeah.
without being all negative and executing badly because you're being all negative. So maybe that, there's something in the middle of all of this. Um, uh, but that's really what all of us need to focus on, right? So we do need to manage risk, and we are creating something that will be much smarter than us. It shown already that it develops its own goals, and we don't know the values by which you're going to drive that, and it's breaking guardrails. So the thing for me that really terrified me, Craig, is I couldn't find one expert on AI in the world, including the leading labs that are trying to sell people on why their technology is wonderful and we should all become a customer. They themselves are admitting there's a real risk here. And I haven't found one person that's actually optimistic about where this eventually ends, right? So the utopian versus dystopian,
Yeah.
you know,
I'll raise my hand. I am confident and optimistic that this ends well. I think that we have to remain in control in order for that to happen. We can't sort of
yes,
take a back seat, right? We can't allow it to happen without us being in charge of allowing it. It's very funny when you mention, you're concerned about something smarter than me. Everybody's smarter than me. Holy shit, I'd be afraid of the entire planet if I was worried about somebody smarter than me. It's still a will of like my motivation is to better humankind, and I'm going to teach every AI interaction I have, everything on my GitHub is about making humankind better, right? Every application I've built. And so maybe we just need to change that mindset. You make a culture that's more focused on finding the right solution. Or maybe I'm just
yeah.
overly optimistic.
Hey, Josh, I'm seeing your comments in here, buddy, and I agree with you. I mean, we have in essence created an alien intelligence. We don't really understand it. We're not sure how it's going to behave in the future. And Craig, those things you talk about, when we're not seeing the world do it. Like we're not seeing a committed focus on safety. Like you even look at what happened with OpenAI, the way that Ilya and the other guy on the board fired Sam, then a week later he gets back and fires the board. You look at the fact that all the senior people responsible for safety, ended up leaving. Um, like there just isn't the focus on making it safe, on creating these guardrails. There's just a focus on the fact that we're just going to race ahead because we have to win the race. America has to win the race. My company has to win the race. China thinks they have to win the race. And if they prioritize safety, they're going to lose the race.
Yeah.
So, that's the
Again,
fundamental
we're in
concern.
control of it. It's not in control of us. So that's where we'll agree to disagree and still be
Yeah.
friends. Yeah.
And what you said is dead true now. Yes.
That's actually a great place to stop because we're running out of time. For those questions that were not answered, we'll send them to Tony and Craig and with your email, and they can answer them more directly. But first and foremost, thank you guys. There's the book. You can't put it down, by the way. At 2 a.m, you're going, oh God, I got to get up at what time? Fantastic book. And again, I want to thank Tony and Craig for participating today.